In journalism and mass communications, master's in business administration, and a certified economic developer. Laura serves on numerous boards of directors, including the National Association of Development Organizations, Board of Directors since 2009, and the Economic Development Council of Colorado. She has many accolades. We're really grateful to have Laura here. She currently lives in Durango and has since 1990 and has 2 adult sons. And we're really excited for Laura to be here to kind of talk more about regionalism. The title of her presentation is Rural Economic Development is Not Hot. But I'll turn the time over to Laura to pull up your presentation.
Good morning. Please don't be offended by my cover slide. I'm trying to keep you awake. I know it's a lot of sitting. Hopefully I can give you some great information. What I'm going to talk about today is basically rural, what the perceptions and challenges are. Just really highlight economic development fundamentals and then focus on 5 strategies that are really effective in rural areas. Yeah. You awake? All right. Ta-da! Yes. Okay, and I won't be insulted if half of you decide you need a bathroom break. We're good. All right. So this is basically what I talked about that I am going to cover today. And I have 20 minutes, so keep me on time, because sometimes I give you more examples, but if you're falling asleep, I talk faster, so we'll see what happens. Okay. So actually, Michelle Haynes with Region 10 gave me a copy of this article back in 2017, and what was really telling to me was the idea, when you thought of the big city in the 70s and 80s, you thought of like high crime, you thought of drugs, you thought of low economic achievement, you thought of low education levels. That's really what's happening in rural areas now. You know, the big cities are thriving, and the rural areas are not. And you know, all of these things are happening. Opioid epidemic, I don't need to read for you, but it was just an interesting way to show that rural is really struggling and economic development has a big job. So what is rural? Again, I'm trying to keep you awake, I'm not trying to insult everybody, but some people think rural is the more space you have, the more stuff you put out in your yard. Rural can also mean you have a dollar store, right? Rural can be beautiful, and rural can be not beautiful. This I love because this really shows rural, and you'll see that rural is predominantly a Western phenomena. And when we look at where our populations are, we're unique because obviously Utah, Colorado, it's public lands. It's really hard to grow, in areas you can't grow and you can't utilize. And so this kind of shows why there's, more rural in our Western states. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's why we have the view shed, so to speak. So some of our challenges in rural, I don't need to go into detail on those, I'm sure you could tell me more, but basically more deaths than births. We have people leaving our community, we have people relocating, we have people aging in our communities, lack of services, people commuting long distances to work, and single industry independence. We're seeing that with mining, oil and gas, all of those types of things. And then also it's really a numbers game. In rural areas, the key is we don't have a lot of critical mass. So when something happens, it is more impactful. It's less likely that we're able to be resilient. And so that's really, really important. And I want to pause a minute. I cover 5 counties, 10 cities and towns, and 2 tribes in Southwest Colorado. We have the only 2 tribes in Colorado. Our population base is about 98,000. So it's somewhat populated. Durango is the center, and that's where we are located. But rural is still rural. And this last bullet point I wanted to point out, Elizabeth Garner is our state demographer, and she does a multiplier of what one job in a rural area means compared to Denver, because Denver's just like your Wasatch Valley. And basically the loss of 100 jobs in Delta, which lost over 800 jobs to mines closing, is the equivalent of over 4,000 jobs in Denver. So it really, really is impactful when rural areas lose jobs. Okay, I'm just going to stop for a second and tell you what economic development is, just so we're all on the same page as we move forward. So it's a program, it's a policy, or an activity. And the goal of economic development is to do these things. We want to generate wealth in our community, we want to build our tax base, we want to build quality of life, and we want to have job growth and preserve the jobs that we have. All right, you're falling asleep. No, I'm kidding. So quality of life starts with a good job. You have no quality of life if you don't have a good job. It's that simple. But not all jobs are created equal. And where economic development focuses is on primary jobs. And I'm going to talk about that. That doesn't mean not all jobs are important. They are all important. But without primary jobs, you can't grow your economy. So I'm sorry for the big wordiness over on this slide, but basically what I want to show you with this diagram is we have the outside economy, and think of the yellow circle as, let's just say San Juan County, Utah. So money comes into San Juan County through a variety of things from outside of San Juan County, and that can be tourism, that can be agriculture, because you're growing crops that you're selling outside of San Juan County, so that money is coming in that did not already exist in San Juan County. It can be mining, it can be manufacturing. It can be retirees bringing in their pensions and paychecks. All of that comes into your economy. And then you have two circles. You have indirect services and you have residential services. Indirect services are the ones that support your money coming in. So, for example, hotels would support tourism. You don't usually have locals staying in your hotels, they're visitors. With ag, it would be the equipment, the seed, that kind of thing. Residential services would be your grocery stores, be your healthcare centers. It could be your universities. Universities could also be a direct base. It could also be indirect services, depending on what you're attracting. Does that kind of make sense? And then we all lose money. Every time you shop online, raise your hand, no, I'm kidding. Just even paying taxes, money leaves our economy. And the important thing is we need more money coming in than leaving, and that's why primary jobs are so important. A residential service, say, would be, I'll pick on Walmart. Don't tell them. Okay, residential services. If you have a Walmart but you don't have primary jobs coming in to support your residential services, Walmart is not going to be successful. So you want to make sure you're focusing on primary jobs before residential services. Okay, I'm going to give you the Silverton example. And Silverton, Colorado, you may be familiar with, is in our region. They had the Gold King mine spill, they've had drought, they've had too much snow, not enough snow, avalanches, etc. But they had gold, and they had ore in the mountains. And so the primary jobs were the miners to get the ore out of the mountains. And then they had the supporting jobs, which would be all the equipment for the miners, the supplies, the train, whatever they needed to support their mining operations. And then the miners were getting kind of bored, so they had the bars and brothels. And that would be your residential services. All right, so you're waking up. Okay, so what happens when the gold goes away? Your primary jobs leave, and the other jobs can't support themselves without your primary jobs that bring money into the area. Kind of a yucky example, but that's really trying to demonstrate what the importance of primary jobs are. Okay. All right, and I don't know why I'm all out of breath. It's not the high altitude. So how do we do it? These are all areas of economic development. In Front Range, sorry, that's a Denver term. We do a lot of real estate and development. In the big cities, there's more of that. There's more business attraction. But what we see in rural areas, and I put it in yellow, those three fundamental pieces of economic development, if you work on those, the others will happen. But those are the ones that we really need to focus on, and those are what I'm going to talk about today. So I have 5 strategies that work in rural, and I want one of those trees in my backyard. It's a money tree, anybody? So we're going to talk about place-based, asset-based, economic gardening, entrepreneurial innovation, and regionalism. And I'll try to go fast through those. So strategy 1 is you want to build a community that people want to live in. Now this is usually unintentional. And what I mean by that is all of you have picked your community for some reason. It may be because you have a job there. It may be because you have family there. It may be because you look outside and that's why you want to live there. It's very, very individual to each person, and that's why quality of life does not mean the same thing to everybody. And so what's really important is you need to figure out, why are people in your community? That is number one. So Blanding, you need to have some sort of business survey at some point that figures out, why are people living in Blanding, and you need to preserve that, because that is the key to people in your community. And it all looks different, and it could be 10 things, but you need to figure out what makes your community attractive. All right, and this, I don't know if you've heard of Community Builders. They're an organization out of Glenwood Springs. This is a 5-state Western survey. So they surveyed 5 states as to why someone picked their location. And I thought this was good because it was Western states, so we all have beautiful landscapes and, you know, lovely areas. And what you see, again, I was saying it's unintentional. These are really hard to categorize. It's not till you get about halfway down where someone says they want a good school system, or they want good healthcare or jobs. The top ones are overall quality of the community. I mean, what does that mean? You know, do you have it? Do you not? You know, that's individual. Safe community. To me, that means I want to see law enforcement. Someone else, it might mean they don't want to see law enforcement. You know, what do these things mean to people? And so that's why surveying and knowing what makes your community and who it attracts is very important to your sustainability. The second strategy is intentional. And I love this one because every rural community can do something in this area quickly. This is low-hanging fruit. This would be your asset base. What makes you unique? Not like any other community. What makes you stand out? What is going to bring people here? What is going to intrigue them about you? And you also have your place base, people who just want to be here just because of the 10 reasons. But this is not just about money, and it's not just about the landscape, it's about all these different pieces, and that's why I like this WealthWorks. They have 8 different capitals, and the thing about that is, you know, the natural environment plays a role. The built environment, you can build something that becomes an attraction. Universities, they know that. You have political. Utah, I mean, you are the center of the Mormon faith. That is a political asset that Utah has that no other state has. Social, cultural, I mean the whole, you know, the native tribes, that is a huge cultural asset, etc. So it is very intentional. So let me be clear, this is not unique. Every time you go outside, you're like, oh, we have rivers and we can hike and we can do this and we can camp and we can, if you live anywhere in the Western US, that is not unique. It's wonderful, but this is really strategy 1. It's why you pick a community, because you like to walk out your door and go to the river, or you like to hike, or you like to bike. But this is not unique. This does not make you stand out from other communities. This would be unique. Let's see here. And I picked these because these are all built things. I mean, who would have thought Cadillac Ranch outside Amarillo would be an attraction? I mean, everyone who goes by, they have to get out, they have to take a picture, and then all of a sudden the kids have to go to the bathroom and they stay and they spend money. You understand? And then the Space Needle. This one is really interesting to me because can you imagine the uproar when they decide to build that and change their whole skyline? But now people know that is Seattle and they go just to see that. Same with St. Louis, you know, in the arch. So I expect an arch or something next time I come back. And then the largest ball of twine. That's just another example. I mean, people are like, oh, we have to take a picture of it. You know, and we're all eye-rolling, but it works. So what can rural communities do to get somebody to stop and be on the map? And I love that because that's, you know, use your creativity. Okay, this is another asset. They don't look very happy, but your citizens are an asset, and you need to listen to them. If they all look like that, we're doing something wrong, right? So as public opinion goes, so goes the community. It's like hint, you know, if they're all not happy about some sort of regulations, maybe we need to look at that. Okay, strategy 3 is economic gardening. This is retain and grow your own. And the idea with this is you are all invested in your community. If you have a job, if you're a business owner, you are invested. It takes a lot for you to want to leave. So we need to respect the jobs and the businesses that we have and support them and retain them and make them healthier. Never forget your existing economic base. A lot of economic development is all about recruitment. You need to remember your existing base. If every business in town could hire 1 or 2 people, just think where you would be. So that's just something I want to kind of harp on. It also builds your ambassador network. If you have really unhappy businesses that are struggling and don't feel supported, do you think they're not going to tell your visitors when they walk in the door? And why would somebody want to move their business here? Okay? And it's obviously a lot more effective to make your current businesses happy and stay open rather than to recruit new businesses. And the reason I kind of put this up, you guys, have you heard of Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory? In 1981, they were a storefront in Durango, Colorado. They still produce all of their chocolate out of Durango, Colorado, still. They're in every airport, they're international, and they hit a tipping point. So they were a small business. They weren't even a primary employer. They were a residential service. They just did chocolate, sold it to the visitors and the locals. Then they went national. Then they went and became a primary employer. So that's why local business can become your primary employers. You don't need to think it has to be a technology company. Starbucks started as a coffee shop. Now they're national. So you know, when you look at your local businesses, you want to help them leverage and grow. So the thing with Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, as you know, chocolate has to be refrigerated and shipped. And all of it being shipped from Durango is not very productive in terms of mountain passes, winter, etc. So what they did is they started a trucking company themselves so that they could be in charge of shipping their own product. And all they try to do is break even, and they work with other companies in the region so that they're not deadheading empty trucks back to Durango. So they are helping the whole region just because they wanted to stay in Durango. We had nothing to do with it. If we had known, we would have probably not been that creative. So always, always support your local business. And again, this just kind of says why. They also create innovation. The trucking company, the way that they could stay there. Support those things. Building the local tax base, they generate primary jobs. They can become primary jobs as soon as they start bringing in money from the outside. Okay, 4th strategy. I love this one. This is another one that all rural regions can do and do very successfully. So this is the entrepreneurial environment. You have people that have decided they want to live here no matter what. And obviously they're going to need a good job. They may not be able to work for a company that provides a good job. They may not have a good job. So they will create a good job for themselves, and hopefully they will grow and hire other people. So that's where you want to work on your entrepreneurs. What we're seeing, just the way corporate America is going, there are less new business startups over time. And that's even in metro areas and rural areas. But to be honest, it's easier to start a business in a rural area. You don't necessarily have the support system, but cost-wise, need-wise, you can go down the street and you know exactly what kind of stores you need in this community. And so it's easier for somebody to start a business. So that's why this is so important. This is what you can do at home to help your economy. 70% of people who started businesses already lived in the community. They didn't come from on the outside and bring their business. Only 30% do that. And those are your tourists that you're now going to attract with your largest ball string. Just kidding. So you want to have some of the infrastructure in place, so things like co-working spaces. Oh, I have 1 minute. Okay. So anyway, you want to do all these things for your environment. You want to have accelerators, co-working, even if you have a coffee shop, someplace where the businesses and entrepreneurs can network, and you provide resources. I know that economic development groups provide a lot of resources. This is our success story. We have an accelerator in Durango. They were sold to Pluralsight, which is a Utah company. They're a 4-year-old company, and they were sold for $170 million Our accelerator program picks 5 companies a year that are trying to launch and get investors and works with them. And this is SCAPE, our accelerator program. That's what they have seen in, they're only 6 years old. Our organization invests some money in them, but that's one piece. So we have business workshops, we work with startups, with SBDC, SCORE, things like that. This is the next step. Business incubators is another step, you know, providing space for businesses as they're trying to grow and sustain. I want to talk about regionalism. Can I go over 2 minutes? Sorry. Okay, regionalism, because this is really, really important to all of you here in the room. We have to increase our critical mass. We have to work as a region. We can't just be isolated by community. Your community is individual. You create your community niche, but you have to work together as a region because you're not strong enough not to, especially with rural. You don't want to be fighting each other. You don't all want to open a Walmart and then you can't support it, and then people lose jobs and people leave your community. You have to think bigger. You can't all have a hospital. You can't all have an airport. And I want to give the example of the Denver airport. How many of you have been to the Denver airport? Is it anywhere near Denver? No. It is not. I mean, you know, and you don't see Denver saying, well, we don't really have an airport. You have to drive an hour to get there. They don't do that. And it serves the whole Front Range. It serves Fort Collins. It serves Greeley. It serves that whole area. I mean, people probably travel 2 hours. And we sit here in rural and go, yeah, we don't have an airport. It's like, we have an airport within 30 minutes. We have a hospital within 30 minutes. It's how you market your community. Even urban areas, they have no problem driving 2 hours to a major airport. So it's how you market the assets you have. You have to think regionally. If Blanding doesn't have an airport, that's okay. You have an airport within a certain amount of time. Does that kind of make sense? You want to make your pie bigger. You want to establish linkages between rural and urban areas. You want to figure out what you have that they need and what they have that you need. And you want to pool your resources and risk. Very, very important. And expand and diversify. You're more resilient if you look bigger. And then again, it solves all of these problems. Dominance by a single industry. Because all of a sudden you're looking outside of your community of Monticello. You're looking bigger. And then my final thoughts. Go with community momentum. And that's something that I didn't really talk about, but if everyone in your community wants to work on daycare and you want to work on telecom, what do you think is going to get done? Daycare. You know, work where the community wants to go because you will have help and things will get done. Telecom will be there. And that might have been a bad example. You always want to educate your leadership. Electeds change. All of you in this room change. You need to know what some of the community goals are, what the data is, what things look like. And obviously build relationships. Nothing gets done if there's not trust. If you don't trust your electeds, you're not going to trust them to represent you and support you. Progress moves at the speed of trust. Again, if your existing businesses are happy, they are your best recruitment effort. And finally, R&D, rip off and duplicate. If you learned anything today, it's not mine, take it. You know, you need to look at what other communities are doing that's successful and bring it to your community. Thank you.